Other examples, Marion Jones, in the 2000 Olympics, she won 5 medals, 3 of them gold medals, and after that it was discovered that she failed the drug test. She finally admitted to having used steroids during those Olympics. The medals were taken away from her. She was actually sentenced to prison. She spent 6 months in prison. The medals were taken away. And not only that, but the medals were taken away from her teammates. Well, that sounds a little unfair, but everybody connected. The relay races that she ran, they were all denied their medals and probably will never get them back. Cycling. We've mentioned cycling before. I don't know why yellow seems to be a favorite color among cyclists, but Floyd Landis, who won the Tour de France, probably one of the most grueling sporting events you could imagine. I think it was in 2008, can't remember the exact year, but Floyd Landis won the Tour de France and was found to have failed a drug test. Interestingly, he had been subjected to several tests during competition, before and after and during competition. Only one test out of several, I think there were 14 tests that were run on him, one of them turned out to be positive for steroids. And on the basis of that one test, which he still denies that he used steroids, the championship was taken away from him, his victory. And he's still trying to contest it, but nobody will listen. Alberto Contador won the 2010 Tour de France. He also was denied his victory because of failing the drug test. Lance Armstrong, who won 7 Tour de France, I guess you'd say Tours de France. He is a remarkable story, remarkable athlete, testicular cancer survivor. And from my oncology class, you remember testicular cancer is one that has nearly 100% cure rate. And he was a survivor before he ever won his first Tour de France. He had metastases, had undergone severe chemotherapy, and came back to compete. Well, he won 7 Tours de France in a row, and he was accused of using steroids. They've never been able to make that charge stick, and I think it was just last month that the final ruling came down that there's no evidence that he took anabolic steroids or any other drugs. We'll talk about the Tour de France a little bit later too, because it's sort of a laboratory, I think you call it, for drug performance-enhancing drugs. Oh, let's go back to doping. What is doping? How do you define it? What does the word mean? The word dope, the English word, actually comes from doop, D-O-O-P, which is a Dutch word. In Dutch, it means, anybody here know Dutch? Okay, I just know what I read in Wikipedia. A dupe, I guess, means a rather viscous fluid. So syrup, for example, you call that in a general sense dupe. Or oil, pour oil, it's dupe. It's a very viscous liquid. And the material that apparently has been used by some tribes in South Africa in ceremonial dances has come to be called dope or dop in the Afrikaans language, which is a derivative derived from Dutch. And they use that as a stimulant. And that apparently is how the word got to be connected with drugs through that. Actually, other uses for the word dope derive from that. You know, you say that, I don't know if they still do it using lacquers. Anybody ever make model airplanes? You paint lacquer on it. What do you call the lacquer? Dope, right? Is the word for it. Or we use the word dope in the sense of information. What's the dope on something? What's the dope on who's going to win the World Series this year? Right? That also comes from that use, because we used to say that a horse was doped. Before it was applied to humans, we would say that doping of horses was common. And so the word dope, as it applied to meaning drugs or drugged in the horse racing field, came down to mean information, the information itself. So we now use dope in that sense of information. So much for entomology, or etymology, I guess you call it. Right? What exactly is dope, or what comprises dope, or doping? Well, the International Olympic Committee has specific definitions. You don't have to memorize all these, or may perhaps Dr. Comaceros would like you to. Don't tell him I said that. Notice, I'm not writing the exam, so notice what it implies, or comprises. The presence of a prohibited substance, okay. So there's prohibited substance, specifically named. Or a prohibited method, not just a substance, but a method. Or refusing or failing without compelling justification to submit a sample. If you refuse to submit a sample just on those grounds alone, you're accused of doping. You'll have to stand, whatever is required of you to answer for that. Notice the bottom one there, availability for testing. This most often applies to what we call elite athletes, those who are in the upper echelon in their sports. This does not include professional baseball, football, hockey. Those are controlled by union labor management contracts. That's different. It's a different world. You're talking about professional athletes. But the requirements of the IOC are that if you're an elite athlete, you have to inform the IOC, or the testing authorities, we'll talk about that, of your whereabouts all the time. So they can show up, knock on your door, give you a container and say, here, we want a urine sample. They can do that. And they've even threatened, because some sports federations have objected to those provisions, out of competition testing, for example. A big controversy. But the IOC has stood its ground, and to the extent that it has told some of the sporting federations that if you don't like this, we'll just take away your sport from the Olympic Games. Tough. And they got ways of making people comply. Or some countries. There was controversy in the most recent Winter Games, I think was held in Italy, in the Winter Olympics, where I think it was Italy, said, we don't like some of your provisions, IOC. The IOC said, you don't like the provisions? We won't hold the Olympics in Italy. I mean, there's big bucks involved here.